Give it up for y'all. Y'all gave us like 50 questions.
Yay!
And it's all 21 questions. Anyway,
Not quite.
not quite, not 50. Okay, let's give it up for Megan.
Good evening, everybody. Question number 1. How do you fight against doubt and discouragement when pursuing dreams? One more time. How do you fight against doubt and discouragement when pursuing dreams?
I think the best way to overcome doubt when it comes to pursuing your dream is to be realistic about your dream. Being realistic that, man, you're going to have some hardships, you're going to have some tough times. Doubt comes from high expectations, that we had this expectation this was going to happen and something disappointed us, therefore we fall into doubt. Or we find ourselves coming against something that's so big that we feel like we are incapable of knocking that giant down like David. So what happens is we have to, in order to get rid of that doubt, we have to say, you know what? If I've discerned, if I know for a fact this is what I'm supposed to do, then I know that my God would get me through. The difference is Elijah was so bold when they said, he said, put water on the rocks. He was like, put more water on it. Then he said, man, put some more water on that, because people was upset because there was a famine in the land. So he's like, man, what you talking about? You're going to put all this water? We need this water. And the moment he had enough confidence, God, to bring fire down and say the fire consumed the rock. That's when you know God is with you. But the same Elijah that was so caught up in God bringing down fire was under the sycamore tree. I don't know what type of tree it was. But he was up under the tree because he was afraid because Jezebel was after him. In life, you're going to go through monumental moments where fire comes down, and you're also going to find yourself up under the tree whimpering because you forget that you know that God is with you. That's why it's important in life that you say, okay, if this is what I'm supposed to do, because I faced a lot of doubts, man. A lot of doubts, a lot of disappointments. But the thing about it, if I know for a fact that God showed me, or you know for a fact that God showed you what you're supposed to do, then you know that you have an expected end, you have a hope. That's why it's just best to just be as stressless as possible, man. And don't allow yourself to get so caught up in faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Meaning that my faith right now is what is my only evidence of going forward. So what happens is if you so focus on what you actually have to go forward, and when those things are stripped away, your faith diminishes. But if your faith is in something unseen that controls the scene, then you'll have the faith that bubbles up inside of you that's strong enough to say that when I face doubt, I know that I can get through this. So with that, that's the question. Oh, my bad. How do you fight against doubt? You fight against it by faith. And the Bible says faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word of God. Therefore, you got to go to the word of God to build your faith. This is not some cliche talk for those who may be like, what you mean by going to the Bible? No, you got to go and say, you know what, God, fill me up. Fill my faith up, man. Like the man whose son was oppressed by the demon. He said, man, God, I believe, but help my unbelief. You got to be real with God. Like, yo, God, sometimes be driving the car and say, God, like, man, like last week, I don't know how I made it through preaching last week with 2 hours of sleep, working 8 hours, but God's grace was sufficient. Meaning that no matter what I do for him, you ever been with God and he done kept you up all night, and then you wake up and you have this burst of energy? God always repays what he told you, what he takes away. So knowing that is when you find yourself in doubt, you got to go to the person who can fill that cup up again. Discouragement when pursuing your dream. Discouragement's going to come, man. Oh, pass it that way. Discouragement's going to come, man. That's why I heard a song that says, man, encourage yourself. Because if you wait for, listen, y'all want to peep in my life? If I wait for people to encourage me, I would be depressed. Because people look at me and say, man, he got it. He good. He's strong. He with God. He walks with God, so he's all right. But if y'all really came within the corridors of my life, you'll find out some things that I face is very, very heavy. So sometimes I got to find myself, okay, I got to cut on my go-to 5 worships. I call them my go-tos. Those songs that gets me right with God, gets me right in that presence. And I got to learn how to encourage myself. So when you find discouragement, you got to find a place with God. You got to find a place in your home where you say, okay, I'm tired of this, man. I'm going to cut this song on. Mama leave, daddy leave, mama and them sisters, y'all get it. I got to be with him now. And every time I do that with God, I come out of that worship session faithful to the brim, running over. I feel like I can move mountains. Imagine if we made it into a habit. What if we had all the encouragement, all the faith we need before the storm comes? See, what happens is when the storm comes, we have no faith to get through it. Because when times are good, we feel like we don't need God when good times come. When good times, if you pay attention, Those people who are stacking waters and stacking food and stacking bullets and stacking guns, while life is going good now, these people are focused on preparing just in case something does happen. They have enough in their storehouse to get them through. But what happens is we get caught up in this trance called life. What this housewife is doing and what this ball player is doing, what this billionaire is doing. We get so caught up in somebody else's life that we fail to prepare our own. Therefore, when a storm comes, we see the clouds. We don't see clouds, we see nothing but sunshine. But when those clouds get dark, raindrops fall. Then you start squandering for some faith. It's hard to squander for faith when you're in the middle of a storm because you got a storm right now. It's best to get enough for God now that no matter how big the storms come, you have enough oil in your lamps to get you to the end. So you got to find a way to fight doubt with faith and fight discouragement with going to the only one that can encourage you, and that's God. And sometimes you got to do that by yourself because if you wait on people, people won't show up. So that's my $4.78 on that. That about $5.50? That about a quarter tank? Okay.
All right. So I'll add very quickly that when we're talking about doubts, we have to first understand or examine who it is that we're doubting. If we're doubting ourselves or if we're doubting God. If God has called you to do something, if God has given you a dream, if he's given you a vision and you find yourself doubting yourself, essentially what you are doing is doubting him because you're saying, well, God, why would you choose me to do this? I can't do this. And it's okay to recognize that you're incapable of doing certain things because we know that his strength is made perfect in our weakness. And so we need to recognize our weaknesses so that we can understand that that's an opportunity for him to step in and do his thing, and we can kind of humble ourselves and step back. But I'll just say that if you find yourself filled with doubt, one, understand or examine or really spend some time with God and pray about where is this doubt coming from, and then where is this doubt directed to? Are you just doubting yourself, or are you doubting God who gave you this dream? Are you doubting the one who can help you to accomplish whatever this thing is? So examine where your doubt is coming from and then where it's being directed to.
And just like these two have said, if you doubt, you have to increase your faith. I was reading today, I think in Hebrews, I don't remember the chapter, but it's the part where it talks about it's like the hall of faith, people will call it, where it talks about Abraham and Noah and so on. But the part that stuck out to me was Abraham, where, God promised him that he will have descendants as many as the stars. And also he said, your son Isaac will be a sacrifice. So he wasn't contradicting himself, he was testing Abraham. And we know that story that he did not have to sacrifice Isaac, and there was a sacrifice already made for him. So basically what I'm saying is that God, when he says what you're going to be doing, when he gives you a vision, when he gives you a dream, that's what it is. No matter what may come after that, what God says is what it is, because God does not lie and God cannot change, because if God was to change, that means he's trying to get better. And God can't get better because he's already best. So if you trust in the best, you can't fail. Just like what Josh said as far as this building being his building, well, not his building, but the building that he's going to use, was that 4 years ago? God told him that. So no matter what type of storm that came between what God has said then and now, it still happened. And it still will happen in your life, no matter what type of waves come your way.
I have these feelings to move on with me and my daughter. And this is talking about from the child's father. But I'll get hope when he tells me he is following God. But I don't have time to wait on that. At the end, he still wants to do flesh things. I stay because he is my baby's daddy.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's real talk, man. Be very careful of feelings. Listen, man. Oh, I'll pass this on. Actions speak louder than words. Fruit is what people come to a tree for. So if that man's tree is barren and his action doesn't match what he promises, then you have to go to God and say, what is the exit plan? Or what is the plan? Because what if God says, I want you to stay because through your sacrifice and through your loving on him, you may redeem him? So people think, that's why it's two folds to that question. You have to always go to God to find out what side of the spectrum you're supposed to fall on. Don't put your trust in what he say he will do. Go behind the doors and pray for him, because at the end of the day, that's your baby's dad. And you don't want to have a situation where you stay because of feelings or you leave because of feelings. You leave and stay because of confirmation from God. Because feelings are like the waves of the sea, the wind from the clouds. And what happens in life when you get so caught up on, should I go, should I stay? Sometimes you need to be still until you know when God tells you to leave. In the meantime, until you find those directions, you have to go to God and say, God, I trust that you're going to guide me in this scenario. Let me see the question again. Now, okay, you say you have these feelings to move on with me and my daughter, but I'll get hope when he tells me he is following God. But I don't have time to wait on that. At the end, he still wants to do flesh things. I stay. See, the reason why you're staying is not valid. The reason why you go or the reason why you should stay should be based upon what God says. Because I know many of us find ourselves in situations where we don't know whether we should go, whether we should stay, and we get so caught up in our feelings at the moment. But never be a prisoner of the moment. Because if you're a prisoner of the moment, those feelings will wrap around you. And those feelings will begin to get from your wrists, not from your wrists, from your ankles to your waist, to your neck, to the point where now you're drowning in your own feelings and you don't even know what God is telling you to do. So the best thing to do in this situation is don't put your hope in that man. Don't let your hope rise or fall based upon his walk with God or not. Let your faith and your hope rise because of God. And when that happens, you will be able to see clearly on what you should do in that situation. Now, if it's an abusive situation, if it's something where it's compromising your walk with God, and if this is an unmarried situation, then you might want to separate yourself from that situation. Because if you're not married, you're not obligated. So what happens is if you're in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship or whatever type of relationship that you're in, if it's not of God, you're already in sin with him. So what happens is you got to say, you know what, in order for me to do as what God wants me to say, if I'm not married to you, then it's best for me to go somewhere else and be in a safer place, whether with your parents or wherever, because it's not safe for you to be caught up with a man because your life is fluctuating based upon his walk. And if it's fluctuating based upon what he does, then once you start leaving, he'll say anything to get you. And you'll stay because of his enticing words. And so it's best for you to put yourself in a position, if you're not married, to just say, hey, I'm going to take me and my daughter. You can see your daughter. Don't take that man's daughter away from him. Be nice, show love, be kind, but be kind from a distance until you have enough strength and enough discipline to hold on to your feelings and know for sure this is what God tells me to do, because we don't know what story God is writing in that man's life. But if you're not married, you're not obligated to write it for him, because God is often the finisher of his faith if he chooses to. So that's my hope that helps. Might be harsh at some, but I hope it helps. I don't want to put your business out. Well, talk to me afterwards if you need some more on that.
How do you discern a God-given call from a passionate desire? Example, the great basketball player that was called to be a doctor.
One more time.
How do you discern a God-given call from a passionate desire? Example, the great basketball player that was called to be a doctor.
How do you discern a God-given call from a passionate desire? That's very tough. I think a lot of us find ourselves in the crux of that too. When you're in an elementary state or you are immature babe when it comes to following God, you will confuse desire, or I remember one time, and I told this before, I was brought up in a situation where I thought goosebumps meant God was in the building. And then one day someone had made one of my favorite dishes and I got goosebumps. So at that age, I was like, I know this is just food, but I got caught up in the traditions of what God's presence is and what God's words are. Therefore, I got so caught up in what I was taught and I got confused that when I felt the same goosebump, well, anyway. But what I'm trying to say is, I was passionate about basketball. I was passionate about business. I was passionate about a lot of different things, man. I want to do so much in life, man, and I was so passionate about it. But I found out one day when God said, Josh, he told me, he said, write a book. Sometimes God's call for you is outside of your comfort zone, outside of your passion zone. Because your passion over time, see, passion is not necessarily God-given. Passion is an effect of a cause. Something caused that passion to do what it did. So what happens is some inspiration, some influence sparked something in you that was the cause to the effect of now that I'm passionate about this. I loved basketball growing up in the early 90s watching Jordan play, and I got amused by that, and I was like, man, I want to play ball. But just because I saw Jordan didn't mean I was supposed to play in the NBA. But at that tender age of openness, I got caught and attached to something where I said, man, that'd be cool to do. And yeah, I may have had some skills to do it, I had whatever, but just because you have a passion desire doesn't mean that's what you're supposed to be. And sometimes God will use your passion desire to learn certain things so that when you really hit the proximity epicenter of what you're supposed to, you have other skill sets and other things to but to associate with that call. But the best way to determine the difference is that inner knower. You know that feeling when you're doing something and you know it ain't right? Driving down a road and you're sure it's the way to go, but something tells you, I think you may want to turn around. See, many of us waiting for God to write on the wall, or waiting for God to make your fleece wet and dry like Gideon. God just says, if you seek me, I will show you. So you have to ask yourself, where are my passions leading me? What is the conception of my passion? Because if it's self-centered, if it's people-centered, not people-centered, if it's self-centered, lust-centered, pride-centered, jealous-centered, money-centered, if the center or the core of your passion is not of God, chances are that's not what he calls you to do. And what happens is, as long as it's not selling drugs, as long as it ain't doing all this stuff, I'm okay. But no, God says, even I'm going to hold you accountable for the good things you did. Because the good things you do is still wrong to me because you're going the wrong way with them. So the best way, like I said before, is to consult your passions. Ask yourself, where did my passions conceive? Because as you grow in God, your awareness of what you're supposed to do grows with you. Man, listen, we fellas, remember when we was 15, we said this is the type of girl we want? Ladies, when you was 16, y'all was in y'all little rooms and stuff talking about this is the type of guy you want. And as you grew older, your desires or your type of woman changed. Your type of man changed because of maturity. So as you mature, your passions begin to either grow for something or diminish for something. And as you mature in God, and God is the one that's fueling that maturity, next thing you know, you'll find yourself like, man, that was me back. Because what Paul said, when I became a man, I put away childish things. We hold on to childish things for amusement. So the great basketball player that was called to be a doctor, many of us won't even find out until we're dead and gone that we've missed it. But the good thing that we have now, we have a Holy Spirit that we can consult every day and say, Lord, lead me, guide me, so that I won't even make $1 in something I wasn't supposed to make $1 in. Because God is such a detailed God. He knows the hairs on your head. He's so detailed, he said he knows how to make sure that you are in the right place at the right time, doing what you're supposed to. And we have this God to consult day in and day out, and we barely talk to him. Who's like whatever your most affluent person you want to meet, whoever that is, that person that you'll run out this room, run up the street just to meet. If you want to meet Michael Jordan or Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, whatever person that you want to meet, they still don't have the capacity of knowledge that God does. And we'll run our behinds off to stand in hours in lines just to see someone do their gift and their call. And we have this God who is omniscient in knowledge that can give you wisdom about anything. And many of us are digging in the wrong place expecting oil. But when you follow God, man, every place he tells you to strike, oil is guaranteed to be there. But do you trust him, or are you lured by your own passions? Because passions take you to a place that you never wanted to be. So that's my change on that.
I desire marriage more than anything. How can I learn to desire God more than I desire anything else?
Whatever you feed will flourish. If you feed the idea of marriage, that thing will grow. See, ideas are seeds. Thoughts are potential forces. So if I water it, if I put it in the right place for sunlight, that thing will grow. If I feel because I used to be that dude, man. I was like, man, at this point, well, anyway. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that we get so caught up on this fluff that we lack what it takes to be responsible of it. So we feed this idea because the culture is telling us, man, we look at our Facebook friends, our Instagram people, and man, listen, I always say this every week, man, be very careful what people post, because what people post is not really what they're living. And so when you get so caught up on their wedding, most people put so much attention in the filter than they do in the foundation of their own marriage. So what happens is they get so caught up on how can I position it for it to look well so that you can admire what I do, but those same people who smile in the pictures are arguing at home. Only God can see the behind the scenes, and God is saying, you're not ready. Are you long-suffering? Are you patient? Are you willing to wait? Are you willing to bear another man's burdens? Are you even prepared for the weight of marriage, but you caught up in the fluff of marriage? You caught up in what it looks like than what it really is. I don't want to be a person that desires something I'm not prepared for. I can go into the Cleveland Cavaliers Stadium and I can desire to beat LeBron, play LeBron. I'm not on that man's level. I can't compete with something I'm not prepared for. So if you know for a fact, I'm not ready for marriage, I can't even be responsible for my own life, so I can't be responsible for somebody else's. If I know my desires are carnal or perverse, if I know that I put more, listen, whatever has your attention is your God. So what you're thinking with marriage is that marriage will save me. It will save me from my loneliness. It will save me from my lustful desires. It will save me from all these different things. There's people who's married and still lonely. There's people who got the sex and still want more. There's people who thought marriage will save them and sustain them. But when you focus on all these different things to save you, sustain you, then the only one that can save and sustain you, then you always find yourself in balance. Is that you? So if you focus on marriage as that ultimate goal will fail you. So what you need to do is saying, God, break my heart for what breaks yours. Fill it with what fills yours. Because every time I go to my Bible, every time I go to God, man, God begins to open my heart bigger and bigger to what I need to do. And as I focus in on God, man, everything else becomes silent. You ever saw a person so focused on what they're doing, they're around so much noise, but they still focus? We got to be people where we say, God, I trust you for my wife. I trust you for my husband. I trust you for my job, but I'm going to start writing this book now. I'm going to do what you told me to do. Listen, I didn't have a job when I wrote the book Unplugged. I had no money. He said, write. It killed my desire for marriage. It killed all that stuff. And every time I find myself fantasizing about something else or want something else, it's an alarm that's saying you need to get back to the basics, get back to God, get back to where you need to be. So if you find your heart fluttering for something else, get back. Because if you don't get back, the further you fly off the cliff, before you know it, you're far away from God, and you find yourself empty. So that's it on that.
I used to be just like that. I used to be the kind of woman that I wanted marriage. I wanted to be married. And it didn't take me very long to figure out that what I wanted really wasn't marriage. I didn't really want to be married. Like Josh said, we want the idea of it. We want the short, what we think it is, but we don't understand what it is that we really want. And we're certainly not ready for it once we understand what it is. Like I said, I used to be the kind of woman that I wanted to be married more than anything, and it got to the point where once I started realizing that it wasn't so much that I wanted to be married, but I used to view marriage as like a status thing, kind of, sort of. Like when I would see another woman and she had an engagement ring on or she had a wedding ring on, it did something to me. Like it made me look at her and wonder, well, what is so different about her that some man said, I can't live another day without this woman. I have to make her my wife. What is so different about her that she's married, that she's got the guy, that she's got the ring, that she had this wedding, and here I am? What is the difference between me and this woman? And that took me down a very slippery slope where I was comparing myself to all of these different women, where I was comparing myself to what I thought marriage was. And God had to say, one, you don't really know what you want, and two, stop. Because everybody is different, and marriage happens for whoever it happens for whenever God deems them ready to go into it. And sometimes we take matters into our own hands and we enter into marriage and we're not ready. But the basis of everything that I'm saying is, do you really, if you want marriage more than you want anything, do you really understand what marriage is? Marriage is a big deal. Marriage is a big deal. And in our single season, we have the amazing opportunity to get to know ourselves. When you're married, you have to focus on that person, and you're dying to yourself every day, and you're serving them. Marriage is ministry. It's not just a cute ceremony with some flowers, a dress, your niece, your nephew. That's not what it is. It's ministry. Every day, it's ministry. It's you dying to yourself. It's you putting somebody else before you. Marriage involves two selfless people who love the other person. Every day when they wake up, the first thing on their mind is, how can I love this person better than I did yesterday? Every time they see this person, how can I love them better than I did? How can I show them? How can I prove it to them? And a lot of us are too selfish. We're entirely too selfish. Entirely too selfish. But you want to tie yourself to somebody for life? Marriage is a big deal. It's a big deal. So if you're like how I used to be, and if this is your question, and I'm sure there's other people in this room, male or female, that want to be married more than they desire God, give that desire to him. And like I always say, if you have something in your heart, if you have a desire, give it right back to the one who gave it to you. The desire to be married is a God-given thing. It's a great thing. Hold on to it, but don't make it your everything. Give it back to him and say, God, I don't know what to do with this right now. You hold on to it. And you show me who I am. You show me what is in me that would kill my marriage before we even walked out to church. Show it to me now while I'm single so I can fix it. And don't stop showing it to me until I fixed it. Don't bring anybody attractive across my path until I fix it, because I'm going to get distracted. Don't do it. Give him that desire, and every day, give it to him. Every moment, give it to him. It's just like I think it's 2 Corinthians 10:5, where it says to cast down every thought and every vain imagination that seeks to rise itself up above the glory of God. You have to do that, not just with the lustful thoughts, not just with the selfish thoughts, not just with your angry thoughts, but with the thoughts that consume you, with the desires of your heart that consume you. If you wake up in the morning and the very first thing on your mind is, dear Lord, this is going to be the day I meet my Boaz, cast that thing down. Cast it down. Every thought. Every thought. So that's what I have to say.
That was good. This story may be a stretch, but I've never been married, not married, but marriage is different when you get there. You think you know what it is, just like what Danielle and what Josh was saying. It's different when you get there. And this story, me and my dad, we a long time ago took a trip down to Daytona, Florida, to see one of his friends from a long time. And, we took a trip onto the beach, and, one thing we said to, his name was Larry, man, it's nice out here. I mean, it must be something to live here and be able to come out on the beach and be here every single day, be able to see the waves, see the sunset, the sunrise. And you know what he said? He said, it's different when you live here. It's different when you live here. You're looking at it through the eyes of, you're looking through it through your vacation lens. You're not looking through it through a person that has to live here every day, and you're just a tourist. But see, when you live here, the tourists are the enemy. And so it's different when you live here. And that's how marriage is. It's different when you get there. A lot of times we want marriage, but all we want is just a wedding. We see the wedding, we want the wedding. We don't really want the marriage. It's different when you get there. So stay content. Stay content.
And to add something, that God will delay and move things out your life until you realize that. And many of us look at it like, well, this situation happened. Why did this guy do this? Why that girl did this? Why this happened? See, God, like I said last week, will make room for himself. And sometimes we get frustrated with God. We always pray this prayer. God, I don't want to see nobody else attractive. God, I want you to move this person out of my life. God, I want you to just do all these great things on my behalf to make sure I stay single. And the minute he does it, what you doing? I ain't mean for you to do it for real. But see, the thing about God, be very careful when you pray to be in his will. Because when you pray to be in his will, you thinking that his will is going to be smooth. But he said, okay, you want to be in my will? He's gone, she's gone, he's going to be delayed. You thought you was going to be with him, that's going to circle around later. All this, he'll move it all around until you like, man, I'm really in this God's will. So be very careful, for real, man. I pray that prayer sometime, and I'm wondering why things are delayed. And God's saying, if you want to be in my will, it's like loading. You know what it says on a computer or in a video game system? Says, do not cut this console off while it loads, because if you cut it off, it'll destroy the console. What happens is we get into things before we finish loaded. So what happens is we're 70% done and expecting the console, which is us, to operate in full capacity. See, what happens when you open yourself up before you finish loaded, you don't have all the updates. So what happens is, if I load till I'm 100%, I get all of the updates. And so what happens is, in life, we fail to realize that we need to always be updated. That's why that thing keeps coming on your computer. Update this, because everything's evolving. As God moves, you move. As God grows, well, he's not growing, he's sustaining himself. But as God grows you in him, you have to understand that, God, I'm not going to get into a situation until I'm 100% loaded and completed. Because anything you get into before you finish loaded, you will not only damage your console, but anything connected to it. Because many of us are dating 5 people, married to 10 people, because that person hasn't got Jimmy out of his life, her life, that person in their life, and you're putting yourself in a situation, and you bringing all of your partners into the situation as well. When are you going to allow God to clean everything and fully update you and load you so that the console, which is you, is now fully functioning instead of faulty? That's why marriage is not something for you to admire. Marriage is something for you to enjoy with God. And what happens is, since we don't have God in our single life, it's a practice of when we're not going to have God in our married life. Mm-hmm. If I don't have him now, don't expect God to be there when you get married. You're going to be too caught up in the hype. Too caught up in the sex and the honeymoon, too caught up going through the photo album 3 months in, 4 months in. The first year you realize, I actually got to stay. I actually got to tell you when to come home. I actually got to let you know I can't really make movements like I used to as a single person. You mean to tell me I really got to be committed to you? You mean to tell me I can't really do all these different things? And we get so caught up in things that we look at that we fail to realize, man, it's about being committed. And if you're not committed to God, you will not be committed to anyone else. If you're committed to something else, and you're committed through your own lust and desires for it to sustain you, but you'll still be mad at it. And when you get married, there's people who wish they was married, got married, and hate it. Ain't had sex in months, ain't doing nothing, no communication. And God just sitting there, when are you going to invite me in? And for those who are single, we're going to let God invite himself into your life so that you can be whole when you partake marriage. What time is it? I can't see the clock. 9:35. How many questions we have left? 4 more. We'll do these questions next week. Let's go ahead and get in our person. Let's give it for our panel.